Hey, it's Danny from projectmanaverse.com, and in this video I'm going to discuss 5 benefits of project requirements. So let's get started. First of all, what are project requirements? Well, project requirements are fundamental part and parcel to any traditional project that's using traditional project manager methodologies, and they're basically the way that we capture what our customer wants from the thing that we're building. Of course, this channel is all about IT projects, so we're going to be building some kind of IT software or system or whatever it might be, and we want to understand exactly what our customer wants from that software, be it an external customer or an internal customer. But the requirements are the traditional way that we gather all their needs and wants. So they'll say, I want this system, I want it to do X, Y, and Z, I want it to look this way, and there'll be a big long list of requirements clearly defining everything that they want. And what we typically do in a traditional project is we take those requirements and we convert that into a design. We design the product, we design the application or the software. And once we've got the design all done, we then build the whole thing. So it's all done nice and tidily. Requirements, then we design it, and then we build it. So it's a really, really important part of project management in the traditional sense. And it's a really key tool. And you will be expected to understand requirements and how they're written and how they're captured if you're going to be a project manager. But these days in the modern world, especially with startups and agile methodologies, there's a tendency to move away from requirements and stop using them. And what we do instead is we'll just get a general sense of what the customer wants, the product they want, from like an initial fact find, and then we build them something like an MVP or minimum viable product, a very basic version, and then we just build it as quickly as possible, and then we give it to the customer, let them play with it, and they give us feedback, and then we improve it, and then we make it better, and then we give it back to them, and then they give us feedback, and then we make it better again, and we keep going through iterations. So you can almost bypass the requirement phase by just getting something together very quickly. You may have some initial requirements just to get that initial product in terms of what you're actually doing, but it won't be the full set of requirements like the more traditional project methodologies. So that's what's happening. Now, why is it important that we don't dismiss the requirements gathering phase of a project and we just abandon that? Because it is very useful, it's very important. I'm going to give you 5 benefits of project requirements that will hopefully explain and make you realize why it's still important we still use project requirements in the traditional sense. So benefit number 1, it helps you to understand the actual true length and the true cost of the project. Because if you have a full set of requirements, you can translate that into a full design. And once you have the full design, then you know exactly, or not exactly, but pretty much exactly how much it's going to cost to build it and how long it's going to take. You can get that full project plan together based on that design, and you can get the full cost of that project as well. So with those requirements, if they're very detailed, you can get a good sense of how long the project is going to be and how much it's going to cost. And that's going to avoid problems down the line. If you start on a journey, you don't have a real sense of how long it's going to take or how much it's going to cost. You can keep going and burning money, and the project goes on and on and on. And there's no clear milestones to try and hit. There's no end date to strive towards, which is really important to get that traction behind a project. So that's benefit number 1. It helps you to understand the true length and the true cost of the overall project. Benefit number 2 is that it will prevent scope creep. Now, if you've not heard of scope creep, let me explain what it is. When you start your project, the first thing you want to do is pull together the scope of the project. So what are you on the hook for delivering? What are you going to build and what are you not going to build? So it sets boundaries, like a framework around the scope of your work or the remit of your responsibility. That's what your scope is. And everything in that scope you are doing and everything out of that scope you are not doing. Now, what tends to happen in a lot of projects is as you start building the thing and you start testing it, you might have some of those customers or stakeholders coming to you and asking for additions that weren't in the initial scope. And that's what we call scope creep. And the requirements keep building up. They keep coming back and asking for changes or more things. And that is scope creep. That's what you don't want. Now, if you have a clear set of requirements from the start of the project, then you've got a leg to stand on to push back against those requests and say, look, what you're asking for now is all very well, but it's not in the requirements. So I'm not going to deliver that. We didn't agree to that. I didn't cost for that. I didn't plan that in my timelines. So if you want to do that, if you want that extra thing, you're going to have to go through a formal governance route. You're going to have to raise a formal change request. That's going to have to be impact assessed. So we have to assess the impact on the project to the thing that you want. So if you want that thing, it's going to cost an extra 4 weeks of time, an extra 30 grand of money, and then we take that impact assessment up to the steering group, that decision making body on your project, and they will decide if we do it or not. So that is what you can use to push back against scope creep. So if you've got a good set of requirements that are very detailed, by definition or by follow on, you'll have a good design and your governance will be in order, so you can actually push back against scope creep. If you don't have any requirements, then you can't really say, well, I know you want that, but it's not in the requirements, and you've got no real means of saying stop because by definition you're doing it in an agile way. You're iterating and giving it to the customer. So when does that end? When do they stop asking for different things and new tweaks, etc.? So it's very difficult to stop scope creep if you don't have a full set of requirements. That was benefit number 2. Benefit number 3 is it helps you with the overall design. It helps you to begin with the end in mind. So if you have a full set of requirements, you can do a full design of your product and you can think about everything and how it all works together, the end-to-end design. If you're doing it in an iterative manner, you're building a little bit. 3 months down the line, the customer may say to you, I want to add this functionality to it. But if you add that functionality, it could impact other areas of what you've already built. And you might have to go back and redo things you've already built to make that bit of the solution fit and work end to end as a whole. So that's where your requirements, your full set of requirements will really help you, because it makes you consider the entire design end to end. So you know that the whole thing is going to work. If you only put out an MVP or a minimum viable product that's only got some kind of core functionality, as you're iterating and the customer's asking for new things, that can just make you have to go back and do rework on the code you've already done to make it work, and it can add cost and it can add time to the project. It's supposed to be quicker and agile, but at the end of the day, that can actually make things longer and more expensive. So that's benefit number 3. It allows you to consider the end design at the start of the project rather than having surprises later down the line. Benefit number 4 is that they're very good for governance, project governance, and traceability. So traceability is basically tracing everything that you have built back to the start of the project, to the initial customer desires and the initial customer needs and requirements. So what you typically do is you build your requirements. From those requirements, you'll build your design, and then every point of your design you can trace back to an initial requirement, so you can understand why you've built it that way, because you're trying to fulfill a requirement. Then you go into your testing, you get a big testing scope, a long list of things you're going to test. We call them testing scripts, probably hundreds or thousands of them, and every test that you do should link back to a part of the design and then part of an original requirement, so you can trace back your testing all the way back to the requirements. That way you know that all of your requirements have been tested in the testing phase. And then obviously you go on to you build your product as well. And through each phase of that journey, from requirements to design to testing, you can get sign-offs for all the documents from all the stakeholders, and everything is nice and controlled and it's all governed nicely, and you've got clear audit trail through the entire project. When you're doing it agile, there's no strong governance behind things. You're making changes willy-nilly and you can't really pinpoint decisions that were made and why they were done. It makes it very difficult to follow an audit trail of why things have been done and where something you built had originally come from. So there's another benefit of having a good set of requirements. It's good for governance and traceability. Now, the 5th benefit I'm going to talk about is that it brings order. Requirements bring order and clarity to your project. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know I say that the prime directive of a project manager is to bring order from chaos and to bring clarity from the nebulae. Okay, so you want to change by its nature is very, very chaotic, and what you want to do as a project manager is bring order and structure from that chaos, because that that increases your chance of success. And what you want to do, and also change is very nebulous as well. It's very foggy. You can't really, sometimes it's very vague. And what you want to do is bring clarity from that fogginess as a project manager, so everyone's crystal clear on what is being delivered. Now, requirements help with both of those things. They make things very orderly. I talked about the governance and the traceability, and you can break everything down. So all that project scope that you want to deliver, that big change, it can be broken down nicely into a set of requirements. That's very orderly. It's very non-chaotic. And then the clarity really helps as well, because from those requirements, you can build a clear end-to-end design. Everyone can see exactly what you're doing from end to end, right from the start of the project. You've got that project vision, you know where you're striving towards. So it really helps with those two things. The chaos and the nebula and the fogginess and the vagueness is the downfall of many projects, and it's a downfall of team spirit, and it's a downfall of project team motivation. So as a project manager, you always want to bring more order to the project and bring more clarity to the project, and requirements will help with that. Okay, that's the video. I hope it was useful. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this one, hit that subscribe button, and until tomorrow, please take care.